freedom of speech according to the Freedom Charter. His profession doesn't stop him from seeing the pitfalls of our government, of our judiciary. And I think what he is seeing is what most of us can see. We are just afraid to speak out, to stand out and be different. And I think we all know the truth. For the work that he has done, he deserves that much to speak up and to be respected for his saying. This is Nikiwe from Mangaung. Thank you.
Good morning, Cathy. I don't know if these people who are calling in are just going to be listening to them and not questioning anything. I'm just concerned about the call from Temba. He's obviously criticizing the Chief Justice, but my concern is him saying there were no Guptas at the Polokwane conference. He was there. Does it mean that he knows all the take? He knew who was there? Because from the statement made by the Chief Justice, just said the Guptas were in the vicinity. That to me doesn't say they were delegates of the conference, isn't it? Or am I missing something? They'll be here. Thanks.
Good morning, Cathy. I heard that the Minister of Finance is on leave and Ramokgopa is the one who's an interim finance minister. This is really questionable to me. It tells me that there is no need of having deputy minister in this country. Just because deputy minister of finance is David Masondo. Why not him replacing Godongwane? It's really fun. It's really fun. Because it seems as it's useless to have a deputy minister. I'm Keshna Mkansi Akandambo Dzumere. Amen.
#SFM Talking Point.
All right, so last week, the Justice, Crime Prevention and Security Cluster gave a briefing where they were outlining just what the strategies that they've been employing in dealing with crime in the country are. Police Minister Bheki Cele, also one of those who tried to give assurances to South Africans that they have the situation under control. Yesterday, we had the Institute for Security Studies releasing a policy review, in particular focusing on the murder rate in the country. And what it shows is, of course, that the murders that are taking place in the country are not only high, but they're highest that they have been in 20 years. And it also pushes us to look closer at what is happening in the provinces with the individual provincial murder rates to further understand what is fueling these figures. Joining us for this conversation today is David Bruce, who is an independent researcher and consultant at the Institute for Security Studies. David, good morning to you. Thanks for your time this morning.
Good morning, Cathy. And good morning to listeners.
We'll also be joined in this conversation by Lieutenant General Tebello Musikidi, who is the Deputy National Commissioner for Policing. We'll let you know as soon as she is on the line. So, David, firstly, I want to start with your approach to this policy brief that you've put together and why it is that you are now saying that in order to fully understand the murder trends of the country, we shouldn't just look at the national numbers and what those national figures are telling us, but that we should dig deeper and understand the context of the individual provinces.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you. Well, in this case, it's quite clear because what we just wanted to do was to understand a bit more about what's behind the murder rate in South Africa. And so the background to this is that the murder rate has increased steadily since 2011. So in 2011, we had a rate, a per capita rate, that's the rate per 100,000 members of the public of 29.5 per 100,000. And since then, it's gone up to 45 per 100,000. In terms of the actual number of murders, what that means is that murder has actually gone up from something like 15,500 murders to 27,500 murders. So looked at in terms of the actual number of murders, that's an increase of 77%. That's a very dramatic increase. But we wanted to just look at it in relation to the rate of murders, which is the rate per 100,000, which means that you can compare a province with a very large population to a province with a much smaller population and see, and use that as a comparative basis for, examining which ones are doing worse and which are doing better. And the picture that emerges from that is very striking, because there's 4 provinces that have experienced very dramatic increases in murder since 2011. And so if you, trying to understand why murder has increased in South Africa in the last 11 or so years, then it isn't a uniform pattern. It's in these 4 provinces that murder has increased, and that have basically driven this major increase in murder that has taken place, as I say, since 2011.
Some of the dramatic increases that we see are coming out of KwaZulu-Natal and the Eastern Cape. Why do you believe that this is? What are the trends telling us there?
Okay. Well, maybe just as a preface to that, can I just say that then, what the analysis that we did shows is that the province which has experienced the greatest increase since 2011 is KwaZulu-Natal, but the Eastern Cape has also had undergone a comparable increase, a similar increase to that in KwaZulu-Natal in terms of the rate of murder. But for a long time, the Eastern Cape has been the province with the highest per capita rate of murder. And so the Eastern Cape is now very distinctively the province with the highest rate of murder in the country. So after that is KwaZulu-Natal, and then the Western Cape is also one of the 3 provinces with the highest rates of murder. So just that's an important thing to bear in mind. And the other province that has also undergone a major increase in levels of murder, along with KwaZulu-Natal and the Eastern Cape, is Gauteng.
The Deputy National... Go ahead, David.
Well, you're asking a question about why these murder rates are increasing. And, what we're essentially saying is that if and we're partly talking obviously about government and the police here, want to respond to these problems more effectively, we need to understand more clearly what is going on in the country. And part of it is just, identifying where it is that the murder rate is increasing most dramatically. So, also, it's not necessarily it isn't a uniform problem across all of these provinces. To some degree, within each of these provinces, where murder is increasing, it's within specific areas that it has increased. And so, for instance, if you look at the kind of murder situation in the country, we have 100 and I think it's something like 1,161 police stations in the country at the moment, but less than 10% of those, or roughly 10%, I think it's 132 of those stations account for 50% of the murders. And if if one's looking at the 30 stations with the highest numbers of murder in South Africa, those account for 20% of murders in South Africa. So there's something like 5,000 murders that took place over the last year, merely in those 30 station areas. And all of those 30 station areas are in these 4 provinces: KwaZulu-Natal, the Western Cape, Gauteng, and the Eastern Cape. And so essentially what you would want to understand is, what is happening in these kinds of areas that's driving these dramatic increases in murder.
All right. Thanks for that, David. Let me bring into the conversation the Deputy National Commissioner for Policing, Lieutenant General Tebello Musikidi. Commissioner, you've heard part of what David has had to say there, breaking down the murder rate to provinces, but also pinpointing some of the hotspot areas in those provinces and saying that's part of where we need to be focusing our attention. As the police, the analysis that you run on these figures and you understand of what's happening in provinces, what is happening that is driving the murder rates, let's say in the Eastern Cape, in KwaZulu-Natal, in Gauteng, and in the Western Cape?
Thank you very much, Cathy, and very good morning to yourself. Very good morning to the team. Yes, Cathy, I had part of what the professor have alluded to in respect of the crime analysis and the identification of the hotspot areas, which is what the South African Police Service has been communicating when we communicate even our crime stats, where we do that crime hotspot analysis, so that we are able to, if possible, pump more resources. This is the 4 provinces that is on the priority list of the South African Police Service. And if you look at the number of resources, be it physical or human, this is where we are taking resources to make sure that we stabilize those particular areas that are crime hotspots. As to the question of what attributes to this high murder rate, it differs from time to time. When we do the crime analysis, the analysts will indicate whether the high number of murders happen at which areas and what could be the contributing factors in terms of the weapon of choice that it's prevalent in the said area, as well as what would be the victims, what are the perpetrators, as and when we do arrest, we do those analysis and identification, so that when we put on the strategies and when we identify the resources that need to go to these areas, we do them out of that particular analysis.
When we look at the provinces and just how they're populated, right? A province like the Eastern Cape, that records among sort of the lower numbers when it comes to the size of its population, but the criminality that is taking place there, in particular the murder rate, is so much higher than other provinces that have bigger populations. What have you understood to be driving that?
What we have identified through the analysis, especially in the Eastern Cape, as you are rightfully indicating, that in terms of the population size, it's less, and you will recall, or we know as the country, that between the Eastern Cape and the Western Cape, we have that particular migration of people or the society that will, in certain times of the year, they will be in Gauteng or in the Western Cape, and they will move into the Eastern Cape during the period like the one that we are getting to. And what we have also identified is most of the time there will be the revenge that happens, but Eastern Cape is one of the provinces that we have also identified the number of gangs that are operating in that particular area, where you get the number of group of young people that are likely to commit these crimes that we are referring to, your attempted murder and murder or violent crimes. Of late, we have also picked up the issues of kidnappings that are becoming problematic in the Eastern Cape.
The call has been placed on hold. Please wait.
All right. I'm not sure what is happening there with the line to the Commissioner. David, let me bring you in there. She mentions the issue of gangs in the Eastern Cape that are ongoing, that are an ongoing concern, and kidnappings that are happening there. When I look at the crime statistics just over sort of the last year, the increase in kidnappings we've also seen in the Western Cape. Gangs, of course, historically would be notorious in the Western Cape, not necessarily the Eastern Cape. So what do you make of that phenomenon?
Right. Well, you see, again, I would just reiterate the point that, and I think it was in some ways confirmed by the response provided by Lieutenant General Mosekile. But is that, what we need to do is make more of an effort to understand much more clearly what's going on and what's shaping, why has a province like the Eastern Cape had such a high murder rate for such a long time, and why has it increased most dramatically? In terms of the information which I have access to, some of the points that have emerged for me is, the one thing that is, if one's talking about the comparison between the Western Cape and the Eastern Cape, the one thing that's very different between them is that in the Western Cape, a very high proportion of murders are linked to the city of Cape Town itself, to the Cape Town metropolitan area. So you've got something like 77% of murders in the Western Cape are linked to, in the last year took place in Cape Town. And, gangs are quite a significant contributing factor to those murders, contributing to maybe 20 or 25% of those murders. In the Eastern Cape, on the other hand, and this is the SAPS's own figures, so I think the SAPS figures for the Eastern Cape were that gangs contributed to something like 4% of the murders, and so there is a gang phenomenon in the Eastern Cape, but that's almost entirely concentrated in the Nelson Mandela Bay area. And so what's very different about the Eastern Cape is that the problem of murder isn't simply related to the metropolitan areas. It seems to be much more dispersed, much more related, is in some ways a rural phenomenon, or linked to some of the kind of smaller towns in the province. And so beyond that, some of what the SAPS's own data reveals is that the one thing that seems to play quite a substantial role, possibly contributing to as much as 10% or maybe even more of murders in the Eastern Cape is vigilantism. But then the main driver of murder in the Eastern Cape would be appear to be various types of disputes. There might be disputes between individuals. There might be disputes between groups of people. They might involve things like stock theft and things like that. But what we're basically arguing is that without much better information, much better understanding of the murder situation in each of the provinces, and particularly the provinces where murder is very high, we're unlikely to be able to respond to these problems effectively.
All right. That is the voice of David Bruce. Lieutenant General Mosekile is back on the line. We'll continue the conversation after the latest 10:30 news headlines.
Good morning. In the headlines, the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza has been attacked. Live ammunition was used to fire at the hospital. causing panic among patients. Electricity, internet and communication have been cut off from the hospital. The public has less than 30 days in which to comment on the South African National Petroleum Company draft bill, which the Energy Minister Gwede Mantashe has published. And angry residents in Nkomazi, Mpumalanga, have burnt the house of a pastor who allegedly gunned down a 78-year-old man at the weekend. The 60-year-old pastor is alleged to have shot and killed Samuel Mahleba after accusing him of practicing witchcraft. I'll have details on these and other stories at 11.
Taking a look at your markets this morning, the rand is currently trading at 18 rand 21 to the dollar, 22 rand 71 to the pound, and 19 rand 81 to the euro. Markets in Asia ended higher. The JSE is also higher in mid-morning trade. Markets in Europe are firmer this hour. Gold is trading at $1,969, platinum $885 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $82.55 a barrel.
Open the Absa Cash Invest Tracker account and earn the best rates in the market, more than the top 10 money market funds' average returns. Enjoy unmatched advantages at an interest rate of 8.9% per annum. Plus, if you open your account today, you could win your share of 15 million rand in luxury travel experiences for two. Yes, you heard right. A trip for you and your partner. My Bank does that. Open yours today in less than 5 minutes on the banking app, at your nearest Absa branch, or consult your private banker or call 0860 111 515. Absa is an authorized FSP and a registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
We are going to Durban when Bafana face Benin in the FIFA 2026 World Cup qualifiers. On Saturday, 18 November at the Moses Mabhida Stadium. Gates open at 12 p.m. and tickets are available for 50 Rand for adults and 20 Rand for children at Ticket Pro. Come dressed in your national colors to support Bafana to win prizes. If you are not in Durban, catch the game on SABC1 at 3 p.m. Also available on sabcsport.com.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
We're looking at the high crime rates in the country, but focusing specifically on the murder rate and some of what the trends are showing there in helping us understand what is happening in provinces, but also how can this then better help inform the police's strategies, crime-fighting strategies in different parts of the country. Lieutenant General Tebelo Mosikidi is with us. David Bruce, an independent researcher and consultant for the ISS, also with us. Siphelele Ngobese is a senior researcher at the South African Cities Network. She's also on the line. Siphelele, good morning.
Good morning, Cathy, and thank you for having me.
All right, great. I'll give you a chance just to weigh in on the conversation shortly. Lieutenant General Mosikidi, I want to check with you, this issue of the police really trying and needing to understand what the driving factors behind these high murder trends and other crimes that are being committed. Do you believe that you as the police have an understanding of what those issues might be, especially given the fact that some of those issues could well arise from social conditions? But for now, what do you understand to be behind them?
Thank you again, Cathy. I believe and I want to believe that even the analysis that will come from our partners, they will know that we partner with them in some of the areas, such as your grant statisticians that we are having within the organization, the analysts that we have deployed, who are specialists. They were deployed with the specialized skills to come and assist the department. We also have deployed or established a unit of research, which from time to time we go and we deploy them to get us these reasons, so that when we draft our strategies, we draft the informed strategies that will then mean if we have to get other departments that need to partner with us to address what you have rightfully indicated, which are social ills, we do that, and we also involve the local municipalities in terms of what they need to do to assist the crime fighting. The recent strategy that we have communicated, that was presented and adopted by Cabinet, was looking at the whole of government approach, including the active citizenry in terms of us having to deal with the issues of crime. So my answer to you is that yes, with all this expertise that we have deployed as the South African Police Service, that is the reason why we were trying to understand what could be the issues that are impacting and that are making the crime rates to rise, so that when we appoint, when we train our members as well, we train them in accordance with what they will be dealing with, that is a reality on the ground.
So what I'm asking, Commissioner, is that you tell us what it is that you as the police have found. You know, it's great that you have a research unit. So what has it said about what is, you know, the causal factors for these murder rates?
One area that one will stress, which is on the high, that is the issues of the social ill, it's the intolerance. In your KwaZulu-Natal area, you get where the family will be wiped off because of the previous conflict that will have happened between the families. You have the political intolerance in that area, in that space. When you go to the Eastern Cape, as I've alluded earlier, that come this time where people are moving back, it's the issues of the revenge, that they will go there and revenge on their previous or even the previous family disputes that could have happened. And now it's the time that others need to pay off, including even the disputes between, you know, friends that might have fought somewhere, and the liquor is one of the areas that is contributing to the murders that we are having. We are having problems of the abuse of this substance, and people then become violent when they need to resolve the matters that they might be in conflict or not understanding each other on.
All right. Pelele, let me perhaps come to you and give you a chance to bring in your own perspective from the South African Cities Network. Of course, you know, crime has significant impacts for the ability of cities to roll out services, to be functioning administrations that can attract investment, that can lead to some form of growth, whether it's infrastructure or just really the general upkeep of the city.
Definitely, Cathy. I think it's important to note that, you know, there's a distinct urban character of crime, and I think that's captured in the policy brief, for example, that eThekwini accounts for about 43% of murders in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. That's reflective of the national picture, where the 9 cities that we study account for about 50% of murders nationally. And so it tracks. And then it becomes very important then to think about it in terms of developmental outcomes, the ability of cities to meet their responsibility to drive a productive economy so that they can, drive shared growth, inclusive growth, sustainable development, human development, and well-being outcomes, because it's important for life in cities to also be equitable, to be inclusive, and for cities to be livable and safe. And the safety element and the rates of violence and crime directly preclude that. So then safety and violence and crime prevention also becomes a developmental question. It's not just something that's separate or incidental that happens, something that directly checks our ability for cities to really meet the object of local government, particularly metropolitan local government, which has a bigger responsibility than just the mechanical delivery of services. And so when you have high rates of violence and crime, you have unsafety. It means that you cannot have economies that are running at the optimum scale so that everyone can access employment, everyone can live in the city, living a decent life in the city. And so it's very important to really correlate our rates of violence and crime and our rates of murder. And murder is a great proxy for understanding violence and crime more generally. And something that very much has to do with what we are able to achieve in our cities.
All right. David, I want to bring you in here again and just ask the question, you of course, as part of this policy brief, have also made a couple of recommendations, but I think at the heart of it really is trying to say that, there's more that can be done, and perhaps there are things that can be done differently from the side of the police in tackling the high crime levels that we're seeing, more specifically the high murder rate. And I want you to explore mostly on this concept of using a one-size-fits-all approach to crime in the country and the need for it to be differentiated based on what the numbers and the data is saying.
Right, okay, well, so if one's looking at, currently where things stand in terms of our understanding of, what's shaping these murder rates, what's driving them. I mean, for many years it's been the established understanding, and a lot of the data has supported the understanding that a lot of murders are linked to disputes of one kind or another between people who are often known to each other. There's often alcohol involved and so on. But one of the things that has clearly shifted in South Africa in the last decade or so has been the entrenchment and growth of organized crime. And so, one of the questions which, analysts are asking is, to what degree is it organized crime itself that is now playing a role in contributing to these escalating levels of murder. So, for instance, if we're talking about firearms playing more of a role in murder, particularly, for instance, in a province like KwaZulu-Natal or Gauteng or the Western Cape, to what degree is the proliferation of firearms linked to organized crime? And so, partly this is, something that one would, possibly be able to look to analysts to answer. But, one of the implications is that, and it, is a question that was raised in part by the unrest in July in 2021 was about the South African Police Service Crime Intelligence Division. So, it seems that, if we were to have a much clearer picture about the role of that organized crime is playing in South Africa, the contribution of organized crime to murder, then we would need to be getting, I think, much clearer information from the Crime Intelligence Division, and and one of the ways, one of the steps that we need to take is clearly to considerably strengthen and even overhaul the Crime Intelligence Division, because, the indications are that, it's not serving the role playing the role that we needed to play in terms of, helping to provide the type of information that we need to get on top of these kinds of problems.
Commissioner Musekedi, I want you to come in there, because again, when we think about what the experience of of the residents of this country is when it comes to crime. Often there is a view that the police don't know what they're doing, that there isn't a clear strategy, which is why we see the criminals seemingly having the upper hand. And the crime intelligence and organized crime are really some of the big areas where these gaps, I think, become exacerbated.
Cathy, I want to take us back to 2016-17, where the South African Police Service, Detective Services, did the analysis and identified that particular shortcoming of the emerging a violent nature and organized nature of committing crime, and thus, as a department, there was the resuscitation of the organized crime at the first levels of first entrance into the organized crime space, hence the establishment of the units that we have them in each province, including at head office. We do have organized crime units over and above the serious organized crime that is within the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation, which is commonly known as the Hawks. On the issues of the crime intelligence, of recent days, we've been communicating as well the successes that we managed to intercept some of your very serious, organized in the space of CIT in amongst others and your kidnapping cases. Yes, it is correct that we have identified the shortcoming within the crime intelligence space, and as a result, there was an appointment. Since the appointment of the National Commissioner, we did appointed the head of the crime intelligence, and in recent days, to look into the restructuring of that environment to make sure that we have at least people that will not that the ones that are there are not police enough, but we cannot continue on receiving these challenges that we are not doing enough. We are saying, can we turn the tide and look at different ways of doing things so that we are not doing things that we did before that resulted in or did not give us a different result. So that overhaul, the capacitation of the crime intelligence, and you can see with the results in recent days that it is gradually yielding the successes in the space of crime intelligence, including how we get. And we are also looking at how better we can strengthen it, better than where it is now, to make sure that we have a proper counterintelligence that will give us intelligence before crime is committed, because we are concerned as well as the organization. And the adoption of what I referred to earlier, the strategy, including the Operation Chanela that we have deployed, we're gradually seeing the change in which a crime is being committed and the number of successes that are coming in, including where even the correctional services came to us to complain that we do not have enough space anymore. So it is not about arresting people and putting them in jail anymore. It is the issue of how do we then change the mindset and the social ease that we're having so that people do not commit crime. And I mean, the issues of overhauling of the crime intelligence, it is what is on the top of our agenda to make sure that we do receive it.
So just for clarity, Commissioner Musikidi, Correctional Services said you're arresting too many people.
No, the space to keep the people, it's gradually getting smaller and smaller. The prisons are 44% overpopulated in terms of what they would have planned before that we can be able to carry this much. So
what were they asking you to do about it?
I think it is the whole of the JCPS cluster to look at how do we fast track the processes in the criminal justice system so that people that are in jail are not awaiting trial. It's one of those issues. And those that are first-time offenders to look at the issues of what would be the possible rehabilitation processes that we can deploy as a cluster, as a whole, instead of just populating the prison. What is it? What are the strategies that we can bring forward to make sure that when they are sitting there, when they come out, as we would expect, they come up changed persons?
Okay. Let me go to Durban. Mohammed, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Cathy. Just to compliment you first, as a former editor, your questions are very explorative and well done. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Mohammed. Go for it.
Thanks. Okay, I love the rhetoric. I've been listening to your show from the time I jumped into the car. There's a lot of rhetoric. Stats, strategy, analytics, everything has its place. But what does it mean to the man in the streets? It means zero. I've been involved in community police forums for almost 25, maybe 30 years. And we hear the same thing over and over and over again. People are tired. We know there's crime. The crime is far too much. But if you break down the stats and you take it to regions, you'll find there's a different level, a different pattern. Now, if you're looking at KZN, we know we replete with political killings, we replete with issues of gangsterism and drugs and alcohol and all of those things. And we keep on blaming the factors, right? Take the factors away. In terms of what is the state really doing? Now, I'll tell you, I'll just use my police station, for example. We're a small police station that's serving a large community. And we don't have enough vehicles. We don't have enough boots on the ground. We don't have enough detectives. And these logistics play an important role to fighting crime. So they need to look at logistics, and we need to repair the issues of logistics as we move along. So the rhetoric is replete, and it's going to continue for years to come. For another 30 years, when somebody else takes over from me, you're going to have the same conversation. All you need to do is just replay your show, and that's going to be the end of it. And it's, we've got things like community and blue strategy. We're like mini reservists, for example. We got to do the work for the police. The CPF's got to be the eyes and ears, and this information gets passed on. So we have been fortunate at our station where we've seen a reduction in crime over the last two or three months in terms of stats at our last CPF meeting. But again, I just want to emphasize that.
So Mohammed, just to go a little bit further into what you're saying, are you saying that the problems that you have experienced are coming through on the police's end, that they're leaking some information, they're not working or pulling their end of the stick when it comes to the investigations that are supposed to be done? Where exactly are they going wrong? Because that's information that Commissioner Musikidi, I think, would also be interested in.
It's multifactorial. I'll give you a very simple example. All right, when we discuss the issue of drugs and drug-related issues in the hotbed of one of our jurisdiction areas, we discussed it at the CPF meeting. The very next day, that information was leaked from whichever level. Not my members, and I'm telling you now, not my members. And those same drug dealers then disappeared. So what is really going on? Well, I'm not blaming the police directly as it would be. We have logistical problems, yes, number one. Number two is, there is corruption. Information is going to be leaked. But those kind of things need to be stopped. And we've identified people who are responsible for this. The police are doing their job. Really, they are. They're doing the best they can. I can phone the police station again and say, listen, I need a van, this particular area or that area. They will come out and they will do their work. But more than that, there are deeper factors that need to be looked into and rooted out from the community.
All right, Mohammed, we're going to have to leave it there for this morning. Mohammed is out in Durban. Temba, you're in Mthatha. Good morning.
Good morning, Cathy and your guests. I'm an official of the Eastern Cape Department of Education. We are noticing a rise in the kidnapping and killing of teachers in rural schools in the small town of Lusigisigi, about 200 kilos from Mthatha. I don't know what could be the cause of that. When teachers go to school, they are hijacked and killed, and when they come back from school, they are also hijacked. Last Friday, a lady teacher who was teaching in one of our high schools there was kidnapped and shot dead and dumped next to a river, in the same spot where a principal of a junior secondary school was also kidnapped and was also killed. We see that escalation now of targeting of teachers and killing them. I'm just interested in the comments of your colleagues there, your guests. What could be the problem with teachers now? Why are criminals targeting teachers?
Themba, incredibly concerning. Commissioner, let me give you an opportunity to respond to both Themba and Mohammed.
Thank you once more, Cathy. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, I think I understood what Mohammed indicated in the fact that they communicate the strategies and the next morning they leak. The question is they leak where? And we've been emphasizing that we root out corruption within. If there is any person that knows this particular individual is the one that is responsible, let that be reported. We're going to look into what can we do more to strengthen our internal corruption investigation capacity that is lying as well within the detective service. Because when you look at what DPCI is doing the Hawks, it's your high level of corruption that will also include other departments, but we have built that capacity. So if we can come in and report so that we root out, we have sent a lot of our own that do not belong to the service, that if you cannot work with us, therefore we cannot work with you, look at better options of wearing a different uniform than the one that we are having. And I appreciate that CPF, Cathy, is doing a lot, is assisting us a lot. Hence I was saying the recent strategy is to adopt the whole of government, including partnering with our communities in addressing the root causes of crime. When coming to the issues of Eastern Cape, I have alluded to the fact that some of the issues that we have picked up in the Eastern Cape is in the issues of retaliation, revenge, the punishment, the vigilantism is one of the issues that Professor also spoke to, and the argument and misunderstanding. I think the intolerance as well is becoming high. And some of the cases that we have picked up were, like the ladies that the Themba, if I'm not mistaken, spoke about, we find that it is the dispute or the relationship dispute that happen between the people, and they come back and either kidnap, or some will be in the process of a divorce or the relationship that went sour, and there will be those kidnappings and the murdering of females in the Eastern Cape space. But to this extent that it's becoming prevalent, I think we went to Lusikisiki. I've been to Lusikisiki more than once, and if this is what is being picked up in terms of the teachers, because the numbers as well will tell us how many of this particular group is involved in either in crime, either as victims or as
all right.
Yeah.
All right.
But I think we will continue to do that analysis and check how many are we talking about, but we did pick up some challenges in that space.
Spelele, do you get a sense that there is this integrated approach, that there is, everybody's moving from the same page, and that the coordination, because ultimately, even if we take a whole of government and a whole of society approach, there has to be that central unit that is driving it from a leadership perspective. Do you get a sense that is happening?
What we've observed, Cathy, is that, of course, on a general scale, not so much. The state at all spheres and all levels continues to grapple with, you might have heard, it's said quite often that, work in silos, we need to be cooperating. There is a recognition that we need to be working more collaboratively. However, what we've observed is that there are small pockets of excellence, where the recognition is coming that, okay, to recognize that you need to be collaborating, you then also need to navigate an institutional environment that is still designed in a way that manifests in silos. How performance scorecards are designed at the output level. It's very much individual achievement. So achievement by components, and you find that in the planning space as well, and indeed in the implementation space as well, and that our entities achieve by opponents and what one might call a tick box exercise. So there is a need, while there are pockets of excellence, where, for example, in an approach to dealing with substance use and substance abuse in one particular city, they've come up with a really useful collaborative method that brings in drug and substance experts from the academic sector, NGOs that are experts, recognizing that cities, although government is the catalyst and should play the coordinating role, as you mentioned, Cathy, it's not the expert in everything. It doesn't necessarily know everything about what to do in the case of someone who is a substance user. And even internally, creating a mechanism for departments to partner, the city safety department partnering with the health department, partnering with the parks department, because all of these ills take place in city space, right? In our parks, in our pavements. And so there are these pockets of excellence that definitely need the groundswell of support to be scaled up so that they are, the modus operandi, the way that we work. Yes.
All right, Siphelele, let me thank you for your time. A big thank you to all of our guests. Let's take you over to the news desk for the latest news update.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
In our top stories, State Security Agency head resigns and Britain's top court to rule on deporting asylum seekers to Rwanda. Good morning. The head of the State Security Agency, Thembisile Majola, has resigned. She will leave the office at the end of this month after assuming the position of Director General in March last year. President Cyril Ramaphosa has expressed his appreciation to Ambassador Majola for her contribution to the transformation of the agency. The Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza has been attacked. Live ammunition was used to fire at the hospital, causing panic among patients. Electricity, internet and communication have been cut off from the hospital. Meanwhile, a Norwegian physician, Dr. Mads Gilbert, who was a volunteer at the hospital, has arrived in South Africa. He says he would have loved to have been in Gaza to lend a hand.
I am very sad to be here, because I should have been in Gaza. I should have been at Mustashfa al-Shifa. I should have been at the Al-Quds hospital. But also I'm extremely happy to be here to see all the good people of South Africa standing in solidarity with the people of Gaza. More needed than ever. This night, the Israeli attack forces entered into one of the most holy places of human compassion and human solidarity and care, the hospital.
The public has less than 30 days in which to comment on the South African National Petroleum Company draft bill, which the Energy Minister Gwede Mantashe has published. The bill seeks to establish the company, ensure proper governance as well as consolidate and transfer assets. Mantashe says the company will be the state's facilitator of energy infrastructure across the value chain. In terms of the bill, the company will be in charge of managing the state's exploration and production rights and ensuring that petroleum resources are developed in a sustainable manner. Angry residents in Nkomazi, Mpumalanga, have burnt a house of a pastor who allegedly gunned down a 78-year-old man at the weekend. The 60-year-old pastor is alleged to have shot and killed Samuel Mahleba after accusing him of practicing witchcraft. The pastor handed himself to police after the incident, but he was released before appearing in the Tonga Magistrates Court on Monday. Meanwhile, the National Prosecuting Authority has confirmed that the suspect was released to allow the police to conduct further investigations. And finally, Britain's Supreme Court will rule later today on whether the government's plan to send some asylum seekers to Rwanda is lawful. Earlier this year, a lower court decided the policy was legal in principle. The BBC's Rob Watson reports.
This will be a big moment both legally and politically. Earlier this year, Britain's appeals court ruled while the policy might be lawful in principle, there was a risk Rwanda might send asylum seekers back to their home countries, where they might suffer inhumane treatment in violation of the European Convention on Human Rights. The government is hoping the Supreme Court decides it is safe for asylum seekers to be sent to Rwanda and that such deportations, probably early next year, would prove politically popular.
Recapping the top story, the head of the State Security Agency, Tembisile Majola, has resigned. She will leave the office at the end of this month after assuming the position of Director General in March last year. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation.
SAFM invites you to our inaugural public lecture, delivered by the former Chief Justice, Mogoeng Mogoeng. The theme of the lecture is constitutionalism and upholding the rule of law in South Africa. Has corruption and malfeasance eroded the moral fabric of the democratic dispensation? The lecture will take place on the 29th of November 2023 at the SABC M1 Studios in Johannesburg. Secure your seat by emailing us at info@safm.co.za.
SAFM, leading the conversation. Every person, no matter who you are, what music you're inclined to listen to, and what you do with your weekends, you need a weekend playlist. It's that musical mix of music that accompanies the lazy weekends, whether catching up with friends and family or just taking some time to reflect. Tune in to The Soundtrack of Your Life with me, Ernest Pillay, Saturdays and Sundays, 1 to 4 on SAFM. SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
It's 8 after 11 o'clock. Welcome to the third and final hour of the Talking Point this morning. And for today on our health and lifestyle feature, we're taking a look at medical negligence. And as I mentioned in the open line, often when we talk about medical negligence, we're looking at the medical legal aspect of it, right? And what has gone wrong, who must be held responsible and accountable, and the processes that then one can follow, or the recourse that is available, especially to victims that have suffered at the hands of medical practitioners. The other angle to this, of course, is how the lives of those individuals are affected. And it's often an angle that is unspoken of, right? And yet, if you are going into a hospital for a procedure that you're told is, of course, they always say that all risks come with surgery, but it's more of a by the way line often. It said, and part of the indemnity forms that you sign also include the fact that you have to acknowledge, that things can go wrong. But by and large, we're given assurances that whatever procedure we're having, that it's the risks associated with it are not that high, and that if there are complications, the doctors that we have are capable of managing those complications. So it really is a worst case scenario where things go wrong. Hlengiwe Mbambo is a PR specialist, and she is a victim of medical negligence. She will hear more about her story in a moment. Hlengiwe, good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Good morning, Hlengiwe.
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
All right. Yes, now I can hear you. Yes, I can.
Sorry. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Thank you so much for coming on to the show. Nompumelelo Mbongwa is a clinical psychologist. Nompumelelo, good morning to you.
Good morning, Cathy and your listeners. How are you?
Great. Thank you so much for coming on to the show. Nompumelelo, we're doing well. Thank you. So, Hlengiwe, I want to kick it off with you. And firstly, one really just has to commend you for your bravery in speaking up about your story, speaking up about the experience that you've had. You describe your life as having been turned upside down by a surgery, in particular a total hysterectomy that you had done. Tell us about what happened.
I hope you can hear me clearly. I actually love how you began to introduce this whole segment, because it's very important for people to understand that, yes, there's the legal part, but there's also a human part to this. And I've gone through it for the past 11 months. I went to do a total hysterectomy because last year I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I had to have induced injections for menopause, and I thought that was very tiring and very expensive. So my oncologist and I agreed that, you know what, you can do a hysterectomy. You've already got children. I agreed to that 100%. I was 100% into it. So I went to my gynecologist, a doctor that I've always seen, and I had a conversation with him to say, look, this is what I've decided, and he recommended a total hysterectomy, which then removes everything so that the cancer doesn't have a chance to either come back or go down to that area. I agreed, and obviously, as I always say, as a doctor, you always need to let the patient know of the risks, because we don't know what to ask. We are not medical people, right? I'm in the PR industry. Whenever I speak to even CEOs, I need to explain what PR is and how you measure PR. They don't ask me most of the time. Anyway, I went into surgery on the 20th of December last year, thinking everything is okay. I signed a consent form. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, signed a consent form that obviously indicates my doctor, who I'm not going to mention, with the hospital as well. Went into surgery. As I was coming out of surgery, he says to me, and faintly, because I was just very drugged, he says to me, we had to stitch your bladder. And that was just the end of it, of the surgery. That's all I heard. Even when he came to see me, because I left on the 23rd, I had a catheter that I had to keep for 10 days. He didn't explain much. He had tests done. He didn't come back to me about the tests. Only now, when I am starting to investigate, things are really coming up and some shocking stuff is coming out. In my mind, when he was saying he stitched a bladder, I'm like, isn't that a urologist's organ? Surely, even now when I think about it, I'm like, surely he should have consulted a urologist in the surgery, or called my family to get the consent, or even if he had to quickly do it himself, shouldn't there be a consult before I was discharged? Anyway, a month to 3 months later, I started just feeling pain, and I thought to myself, no man, it's probably the stitch, because it's a big stitch. And I went to him in February, and he said to me, no, you must, it's just probably just the pains, etc., etc. And I said, let's just make sure. Can we check? And then I did a CT scan. Even when I did the CT scan, I was not discharged by him. He sent another doctor to discharge me. And I asked this doctor, I'm like, what are the results? And he's like, your doctor's going to call you. On my way home, he calls me, acting like he doesn't know where I am. I'm like, I'm on my way home. I just got discharged by your colleague. And he says to me, yes, you need to see a urologist. There's something that's wrong. Then I started seeing my urologist. I'd had a big surgery in March for 6 hours, which didn't fix the issue. But the issue was when he was stitching my bladder, he mistakenly nipped my uterus, which is the tube that leaves the kidney and takes the urine to the bladder. So on my left-hand side, my urine was sitting on my kidney until the time a urologist saw me in March. I had back pains. I was very sick, and I had questions. I'm like, why didn't he say anything? You know, when you're still going through something, you don't know how to make sense of it. You're like, okay, I kept asking my urologist. Obviously, he can't speak for a gynecologist, but I kept asking people, nurses, and this happened at a private hospital. No one said anything to me until I took it upon myself to start investigating, to ask for the notes, to ask for the records, to ask for the reports. I lost my job. I couldn't work. My family had to see me going inside of hospital. I think I was admitted 10 times at that same hospital. I went to surgery, putting stents upon stents. I had infections. I have a partner. I could not be a partner fully to him because I was just having infections. I had problems upon problems. And this week, Friday, last week, I took a decision with my urologist that I'm going to remove this kidney because I'm living with pain. So this week, Friday, I'm going into the hospital to remove my kidney, because my left kidney, because it's just painful. But the great thing about it now is that I've started seeing how doctors conduct themselves. And I had questions. I'm like, why didn't he tell me this? Why didn't he do this? Because my urologist said to me, come on Thursday, let's sit down, let's talk about what it means to remove a kidney before you actually do it. So I'll have all of that information, all of the consent. He even said to me, I'm going to need assistance. All of these things I have information to. But, and I just want to add this to this. As I investigate, number one, I saw that when he gave me his report, I had an assistant. There was an assistant in my surgery that I didn't consent to. And when I investigated this assistant, I went to HPCSA and I asked, who is this person? It turns out this person is not a doctor, but this doctor was in my surgery. I just can't say his name. I know I sent your producer the email from HPCSA saying we do not know who this person is. So there's a bigger case here. Of consent, because I have every right to consent. I have a constitutional right for privacy and confidence. The hospital, I've been to them twice and I asked them, who's this person? You should have this information. No one has this person. There's a case that's been opened at Douglasdale for fraud. And this case is just becoming bigger and bigger every single day. And I don't know how I'm holding on.
All right. What an ordeal that you have been through, Hlengiwe, and certainly a difficult time. I think on the one hand, there's what you've been through physically, just having to go through all of the multiple surgeries you've needed, but also the emotional impact of it all, the psychological impact of it all. We'll continue this conversation after this quick break.
The grass will suffer more when JVWFC confront University of the Western Cape ladies. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Third place JVWFC are looking for maximum points to get closer to second positioned UWC ladies. But the Western Cape institution want the highest possible marks. Witness the queens of the beautiful game, JVWFC versus UWC ladies, the Sunday 19 November at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. # we love it here. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
SFM invites you to our inaugural public lecture, delivered by the former Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng. The theme of the lecture is constitutionalism and upholding the rule of law in South Africa. Has corruption and malfeasance eroded the moral fabric of the democratic dispensation? The lecture will take place on the 29th of November 2023 at the SABC M1 Studios in Johannesburg. Secure your seat by emailing us at info@safm.co.za.
SAFM, leading the conversation.
What was that sound? Was it a life support machine in an ICU ward? Was it a car reversing for the driver to take another look at a woman he saw at the bar last night? Or was it the birth of a new robot machine about to change the world? This time, you decide. It's your story. The award-winning SAFM Playwriting Competition is back. SAFM invites all writers to explore the medium of sound, the theater of the mind, and to create a 1-hour radio play in English. Get writing now and submit your play before the 22nd of January 2024 for a chance to win one of 3 large cash prizes. For more information, visit safm.co.za.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
All right, we continue the conversation on the Talking Point. Tlengiwe Mbambo is a PR specialist who's also a victim of medical negligence. Nompumelelo Mbongwa is a clinical psychologist. Nompumelelo, just listening to Tlengiwe's story, one can hear how many different aspects of her life have been affected by what she's going through. What would you say to somebody like her, and I think many others who are experiencing or who have experienced medical negligence?
Firstly, I'd really like to express my empathy towards Lenny. I mean, you experience such cruelty and trauma at the hands of qualified people where you have trusted them with their life, but unfortunately many people like Kenny will experience that. But firstly, maybe I can differentiate for us here, Cathy, where there is a vast difference between medical negligence and a medical accident. So with negligence, I think it would refer to something that could have been prevented, like Henry said, based on all the checks and balances that would have been done. This would be based on the best practices of the doctor, the qualification tests that are done, and the resources of the institution. Whereas with a medical accident, though the doctor may be qualified and trained, but there is always that one chance for a risk factor with all the procedures and examinations, where there is that chance of a human error. However, it's just equally traumatic, whether it was an accident or a negligence. But on her part, it really does seem like it was negligence where the doctor was not qualified and was not working in the best interest. So what I would say to her is talking about it and re-narrating the story for her to make sense of what happened to her, kind of like getting the clarity. It kind of relieves the patient from all these feelings of resentment and guilt, and because it wasn't her fault, you get to sit with feelings of, should I have consented to this? What if I hadn't done? And that gets weighing on a patient, and you sit with feelings of being, low mood as well as anxiety, and a lot of distrust. Because she still is in the system, the patient still continues to go for either reconstructive surgery or corrective surgery, but in the same sentence, mistrusting the people that should be treating her.
Dealing with all of this, I think, and still having to be present in your family, still having to be present in your relationships, that can also just add to the burden of the moment. How would you advise that people try and navigate that space too?
Hello.
Hi, Nompumelelo. Hello, Nompumelelo. All right. It looks like we've lost Nompumelelo on the line. Perhaps, Hlengiwe, you can speak to us then about what you have been doing in this period, because it's been a lot. How are you managing it all?
I'm not gonna lie. At first, I really couldn't. But having a very strong partner and a very strong family, my mother and everybody else that's in my family supporting me. And I think the biggest thing is knowledge. You know, I went and I read the national acts, the National Health Act. I read the Bill of Rights, what my rights are. And I think for me, being educated in that perspective kind of helped me, because then I could see that, no, man, something is wrong. There's an informed consent. There's something called being violated, bodily integrity on section whatever. So for me, it was just about getting the knowledge and really having those conversations with my partner. And also, I did go. I actually was admitted to a KISO for a week because I just couldn't take it. I just needed silence. So seeing a psychiatrist, seeing a clinical therapist, seeing those people and actually talking about my story. There's someone who I read the WhatsApp story. It says, "Be a warrior, not a warrior." And at first, I was so much of a warrior. Now I want to be a warrior in my own story, and not just me, because every second person I speak to would say, "Oh, you know, my mom, they also did this," or "Smang," and it's so much in the community. I've got emails and WhatsApps of people that I'm communicating to right now who are going through the same thing, and also reporting it to HPCSA, reporting it to the police. I've been fortunate because HPSA has been very transparent with me as to what's going on. They're investigating this bogus assistant doctor that was in there. The police are also, the investigator has been just giving me feedback. Yes, he's getting resistance from the doctor because we haven't got his statement for 4 days now. And obviously, surely if you know this assistant and you hired him, you should have just told us in the beginning that this is the person. But that's not the case. But having those people not shout at me when I call and say, "What's the update?" and just being supportive, because they know this can't be easy. This alters your whole life completely.
And tell me, Hlengiwe, have you decided to officially pursue any other action against this doctor for now?
Yes, so the HPCSA is busy with, I know that the board is looking at my case at the moment, at how professional he acted during that time. And it's been very quick, because I always say, what's 2 years? 2 years, it cannot take 2 years to see if there's a negligence or not. The police are also, I actually want this person in prison, both doctors. So the police are busy doing a fraudulent case. And I know when they spoke to me, they said if this bogus doctor did touch me, because the description of an assistant is someone who will help you with an incision, who will help you clamp, who will help you sew. And I don't know who this person is. So the case is also moving to attempted murder.
All right. Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, unbelievable what you've been able to uncover. Xolani, I want to take your call quickly. You're in the Eastern Cape. Please keep it as short for me as possible, please.
Oh, hi, Sister. How are you?
I'm well, Xolani. Go for it.
Okay. Thanks, Sister. Coincidentally, I called yesterday, but the lady who attended the call said this is the perfect show tomorrow. Here is my story, Sister. I'm calling on behalf of my mother, who went for an operation on the 22nd of March at Life St. Dominic's in East London. Now, the doctor who operated her, she was there for a total knee replacement. But when she was in theater for about 5 hours. Now, when we came to visit her, she told us that the doctor said there was an accident in theater, but he never explained what type of an accident that was. Now, the problem that we are facing now, the doctor never told us what happened. My mother came up with 2 operations. The first one is the total knee replacement. Then on the side of her tibia, there is also another operation. Now, the problem that we're facing now, my mother has got a numb a leg. I'm not sure what to call in country in English, but she has got those tickling sensation, and also she cannot walk without the crutches. Now, one other problem that we are facing now is that apart from the fact that the doctor never tell us what happened, we seek another medical intervention from another doctor, but the doctor said he cannot attend to my mother's case until or unless the doctor who operated her explain what happened, because no one wants to.
Yeah.
Now the another issue is that on the 30th of October we went there for medical checkup. Yeah, but the doctor denied that we had a checkup, even though the business card says that we've got a checkup on the 30th, and also his incapacity to live.
You know what, Xolani? This sounds like the kind of matter that the health ombudsman would be interested in. So I would highly encourage you to lay a complaint with the health ombudsman. We'll give you their details offline so that you're able to pursue it better. But it would also, need the officials in the province to look deeper into, to understand what exactly has gone on. But in some instances, you might find that there's a reluctance to do that, which is where the health ombudsman then would be able to come in. Hlengiwe, let me thank you for coming onto the show as well, and for sharing the story that you have with us. And really, I think so many people will learn from your experience. It's time for the latest news headlines.
Good morning. In the headlines, the Competition Commission and Standard Chartered Bank have reached an agreement after 8 years of litigation. This comes as 27 other banks that are allegedly involved in collusion are appearing before the Commission. The head of the State Security Agency, Timbisile Majola, has resigned. She will leave the office at the end of this month after assuming the position of Director General in March last year. And the Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza has been attacked. Live ammunition was used to fire at the hospital, causing panic among patients. Electricity, internet and communication have been cut off from the hospital. I'll have details on these and other stories at 12.
Dear Africa Chipembe,
Siyabonga.
Realeboga. Thank you for experiencing the Rugby World Cup France 2023 in your language of choice on SABC radio stations and SABC TV channels.
This journey is fulfilling and exhilarating when you are on board.
The front row belongs to Africa Tonga.
Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
It's in those minds young and aflame, in the reach of those dare to reach, in the possibilities dancing just for you, in the eye and ear of a dream in fever. Yes, it's in hope, hope and light pulled near and sent afar. Yes, it's in hope, from us to you. SABC Education, enriching minds, enriching lives.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
All right, we wrap up the show this morning looking at the conversation, looking at the work being done by the Nelson Mandela Museum. They're hosting the second African Liberation Heritage Indaba. The Indaba aiming to bring together former liberation movements in Southern Africa and the diaspora. Well, to tell us more about this initiative is Phumeza Skoti, the chairperson of the council. And, or rather, apologies for that. I must mention that Dr. Siphe Potelwa is the deputy chairperson of the Nelson Mandela Museum Council. Dr. Potelwa, good morning to you. Thanks for your time this morning.
Good morning, Katie. Good morning to the listeners of SAFM.
Let's talk about this particular initiative that you are rolling out now. What is the African Liberation Heritage Indaba?
Firstly, thank you very much, Kathy, for that question. Firstly, let me address the theme we approached this year as a second liberation Indaba in reflect of the decolonization and the transformation project in South Africa. We felt to unpack this under 3 themes per day. This is an event that is hosted for 2 days. One, we speak of the African youth as an architect of the future. We understand in South Africa, one of the key values of Dr. Nelson Mandela is the promotion of young people's skills development. We invited the political formations of different universities across the Eastern Cape to partake and unpack the young people, the issue of the architect of their future. The second one that is in practice is about the African women leadership in the helm of transformation, where we felt that it's time whereby women should steer up the leadership in different places, in boards that we found ourselves in number of entities of government, mismanagement, consequence management that is not there, accountability that is not there, ethics that was not there, and all these organizations were led by males. Now we invite the women in leadership in the helm of the transformation to reflect how far are we in the decolonization of and transformation of South Africa. Third one that we addressed yesterday, the issue of decolonization, the projects in reflection of project aspects and challenges. The issue of education that we need to decolonize, where the students of Mpumalanga, students of Limpopo, that are not yet taught in their mother tongue language. And then we ask ourselves, how far are we in this transformation? How far are we in the transformation of the environment, development of our communities? We still found, Katie, students are still walking long distances to school and feeding bucket system that are still reflecting, because we've got a government that is still not yet looked at the consequences of decolonizing the issue of the past. Let me end there for the time of the first one, and then I will follow up with the process of the today's agenda. Thanks, Katie.
Sure. What you're holding is, of course, a 2-day Indaba. And let's talk then about what you are hoping you'll be able to get out of it.
Thank you very much for that, Katie. Our interest result of this is to bring into attention autonomous about the values of Dr. Nelson Mandela, is to present, and we are presenting and promoting what the beliefs of Dr. Nelson Mandela and the struggles that are still there confronting the political, the economical challenges of the black people, in particular in the post-colonial and the current dispensation, where there is a poverty that is rising. We felt that this is the high time as we are facing towards the 2024 elections. That means this African Liberation Indaba came at the right time of reflection, so that we see next year we'll be reaching the 30 years of liberation. But how far are we? What have we achieved today and what we have not achieved? In transparency of telling the truth and the values of Dr. Nelson Mandela. Are we there yet, or are we not yet there? That is the pain of accountability is still there, is not addressed. Transparency is there, is not addressed. The issue of consequences, we speak of corruption, that they would have now be disappointed that today we are still raising the issue of corruption. But in the same corruption, we are not yet taking the government into consequence management. There is no action. So we thought that the results of this liberation Indaba will see the presentation of the young people, the old, the liberation movement, the gallant fighters. Like today, we have got here Dr. Simang, who's unpacking the setting and the tone of this particular theme. So we need people who are going to tell the truth and the results that will manifest for the people to see the reality. That is what I want to wish to get.
What have been the responses, number one, just to the overall indaba from the representatives of the liberation movements in the SADC region? Did you get positive responses? And do you find that for those who have come through, that they're having honest reflections?
No, we received a very positive contribution, even for the ambassadors that were present yesterday. To cite one ambassador, the ambassador had Mulelo Rakwena. The another ambassador that was coming from Rwanda. So these ambassadors preach and acknowledge the reflection and the contribution of the liberation movements. We had a lot of political formations, except the student political formations. Even the South African political formations were here to unpack and to contribute and to give us the results that we're expecting to see and to speak volume as a museum that is preserving and promoting the legacies of Nelson Mandela.
Let's talk about what happens beyond the indaba. How are you going to be using the information that you are gathering and the data that's being shared?
Thank you very much for that question. Yesterday, now we are hosting these not ordinary in the hotel or resorts. We are in partnership with the Nelson Mandela Museum. We signed the MOU with the museum with the understanding that the liberation knowledge should be preserved and be promoted for studies. We are in a discussion that we thought it would be fundamental to provide a postgrad in the liberation studies, not to archive and conserve this without knowledge reading for the upcoming generation. So that is the progressive that we are hosting at the university. We will host to other universities, but we signed the partnership of learning, teaching and learning at the level of the institutions of high level. We know reality states that if now our history is not written and it's not taught in the institutions, we will always have the history that will be distorted.
That is Dr. Siphe Potelwa. He's the Deputy Chairperson of the Nelson Mandela Museum Council. Let me thank you so much for your time this morning. And of course, that conversation has been brought to you by the Nelson Mandela Museum Council. On that note, it brings us to the end of our show for today. We're back with you again tomorrow. Tomorrow will also be Municipal Watch, and looking forward to the conversations that we'll have. We'll be looking at the Dr. Ruth Mpati. Apologies for that. We'll be looking at the Dr. Ruth Mompati Council or Municipality. I've suddenly lost control of my tongue. We'll be taking a look at the Dr. Ruth Mompati Municipality. Wow, now I'm even saying university. Okay, let me just wrap it up while there's still some semblance of redeeming myself. I'll see you all again tomorrow. Have a lovely afternoon. Up next is the book reading.
The grass will suffer more when JVWFC confront University of the Western Cape ladies. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Third place JVWFC are looking for maximum points to get closer to second positioned UWC ladies. But the Western Cape institution want the highest possible marks. Witness the queens of the beautiful game, JVWFC versus UWC ladies, the Sunday 19 November at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. # we love it here. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
The ANC's been in charge for nearly 30 years. Unemployment is the biggest long-term problem that we have. I think if you had to ask people, has the ANC created jobs, the answer would almost certainly be no.
Look at the labour force survey results, and I don't think it has anything to do with politics. It's a product of focused interventions, and I think combined interventions to try and tackle the challenge of employment creation. The fact that this is the largest employment increase, between the previous quarter and the current quarter recorded, we don't believe that there's politics to this. It is something that South Africans should embrace.
Mahlangi Bengu Mutsiri, the national spokesperson for the African National Congress.
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes, 6 to 9 a.m. SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
The book reading. Please note the views expressed in this book are not that of the station. Listeners' discretion is advised. SFM presents another episode of Simply Larry, read by Simpiwe Nkosi, written by Elias Masilela.
For the boys, the most important building on the west side would have been the mega dining hall. It used to be called Gasamas, or the place of Summers, after Father James Summers, who provided essential sustenance for many generations of boys. During our time, lunch consisted of a hot soup and a thick slice of bread, equivalent to a quarter of a loaf, and cost only 2 cents. With inflation, the cost could have risen to as much as 5 cents at the